this lecture here in the Hall of History, we're going to look at the early settlements. This map shows the approximate locations of a lot of the Native American tribes that inhabited the United States at this time. And we're going to look at mostly the East Coast here. Why did settlements start in North America? Kind of the same thing. A lot of things start. Try to turn a quick profit, entrepreneurship. And the European investors thought, you know, we may be able to make some money on this brand new world there that's across the Atlantic Ocean. The Roanoke disasters, this English colony started about 1587, and 3 years later it pretty much disappeared. And there's really not a whole lot of evidence why. You know, starvations, it could have been the Native Americans wiped the colony out, and so forth. But all that left was the word Croton carved in a tree. In 1607, you had Jamestown, and again, it was formed to turn a quick profit. John Smith is given a lot of credit about 1608 for turning things around. He was a disciplinarian, and it's always interesting his rule: he who works not eats not. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. In time, though, he was injured and was forced to leave, and then about a year later or so, a harsh winter. Settlers had not harvested enough food for winter begins. And then the Native Americans, the Indians, also killed the search party as well, destroyed the settlers, crops, and cattle. If you can't eat, you're not going to survive. Well, what made the colonies really economically viable? You had to have something you could sell, and it was really the introduction of tobacco. The colonies, with the introduction of tobacco, could turn a profit. The only problem was if you had these large acreages of tobacco, it really ran off labor, and that labor was manpower. Two ways to get manpower. In the beginning, it was indentured servants. People would come over from England and so forth, and they would exchange their work for 4 to 7 years, and after that, they would be a free person. Well, that was fine for a short period of time, and then about 1619, they started bringing in Africans first brought to North America, the slave trade, which definitely down the road would prove problematic. Another reason for people to leave Great Britain and start colonies: religious freedom. A couple examples here: the Massachusetts Bay Colony, how to run the Church of England. You got to remember, before this, the Church of England broke off from the Roman Catholic Church. And so you had a lot of friction going on there. Maryland allowed freedom of worship to all Christians. There was a Catholic minority within Maryland. But the whole idea here in the colonies was freedom from persecution and freedom of worship as you wish were really many of the important factors in the founding of many early settlements. The couple main themes of the early colonies: they were so far away from England, they were left alone. And so what ended up happening, as these colonies were left alone, they started to govern themselves. They were allowed to develop without interference from England at all. And what ended up happening, as you start to govern yourselves, then England saw, whoa, there's some money to be made. We should probably start investing some time, and maybe our military over there, that the people already there did not like this whole idea. Once you start self-governing yourself, it's tough to give up that control to somebody else. A modern day example, it might be some children moving out of the house and then moving back in their late 20s. And all of a sudden you're under your parents' rules again, so to speak. It is not an easy thing to do. The southern colonies, you think about the southern colonies, you get into Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, you start having a little bit more moderate weather. And this is pretty much a rural society. And the plantation was a driving force between the South's development. And a plantation is a farm specializing in a single crop. Later on, a couple centuries later, you can see cotton is going to start to be the single crop. But right now it is tobacco. But really, the small farmers made up the majority of the southern population. But as things typically are, it's the people with the money that really control the economy along with the politics and the social institutions. How did slavery take hold in the New World? Well, as the indentured servant population began to fall off, you still needed this large labor pool. And as you can see from this slide, it was the African slaves that really fulfilled this large labor pool. And you can read through this slide yourself. And slavery will be a problem issue for the colonies and the United States, and eventually to the Civil War. And it is still talked about today. Here's a map of 13 colonies, and we'll be doing some work here fairly shortly on the identification and the geography of the